The morning sun peeked through the glass doors of Cedar Grove Market as Sarah Chen unlocked them precisely at 7 o'clock a.m. She had arrived 30 minutes earlier, as she did every morning, to check the overnight delivery and ensure everything was perfect for another busy day. At 32 years old, Sarah had worked her way up from a part-time cashier to become the youngest store manager in the company's history. Her black hair was neatly tied back in a practical ponytail, and her store uniform was always crisp and clean. She took pride in looking professional, even though she often worked alongside her staff stocking shelves or manning the registers. The store employees called her the hurricane behind her back, not because she was harsh, but because she seemed to be everywhere at once, helping with every task imaginable. "Good morning, Mrs. Rodriguez," Sarah called out cheerfully to her first customer of the day, an elderly woman who came in every Thursday morning to buy fresh bread and milk. Mrs. Rodriguez had been shopping at Cedar Grove Market for over 20 years, and she had watched Sarah grow from a teenage cashier into a confident manager. "Sarah, dear, how many times must I tell you to call me Alina?" The old woman smiled, pushing her small cart toward the bread aisle. Sarah grinned, knowing they would have the same conversation again next week. These small, friendly exchanges were what made her job special. The morning rush began as usual around 7:30 a.m. Office workers streamed in for their coffee and breakfast sandwiches, while early bird shoppers arrived to beat the crowds. Sarah noticed that Jenny, one of her newer cashiers, was struggling with the morning rush at her register. Without hesitation, she opened another checkout lane. "I'll take the next customer here," Sarah announced, switching on her light. She could have stayed in her office doing paperwork, but that wasn't her style. She believed a good manager should know every aspect of their store's operations and be willing to help wherever needed. The store's morning soundtrack played softly in the background, a mix of gentle pop music that wouldn't offend anyone but was just upbeat enough to keep people moving. The smell of fresh coffee from the store's small cafe mixed with the scent of just-baked bread from the bakery section. Mark, the teenage baker's assistant, had outdone himself today with the croissants. Sarah rang up customers with easy efficiency, greeting each one with a genuine smile. She knew many of them by name. There was Tom, the construction worker who always bought the same turkey sandwich; Maria, the nurse coming off the night shift who needed her strong coffee; and Mr. Park, the retired teacher who loved to chat about his grandchildren. Between customers, Sarah noticed little details that needed attention. She made a mental note to have someone clean up a small spill in aisle 3, reminded the stock boy to rotate the milk properly, and asked the maintenance staff to check the flickering light above the produce section. Her eyes seemed to catch everything. The morning sun now streamed fully through the front windows, making the freshly waxed floors gleam. The produce section sparkled with morning dew from the automatic misters, making the vegetables look fresh and appealing. Sarah had personally arranged the organic section yesterday, creating an eye-catching display that was already attracting attention. As she served another customer, Sarah checked her watch. 8:45 a.m. The morning rush would soon give way to the quieter mid-morning lull. She planned to use that time to train Jenny on some new procedures and maybe finally get to those inventory reports waiting on her desk. Looking around her store, Sarah felt a sense of pride. Cedar Grove Market wasn't the biggest or most luxurious supermarket in town, but under her management, it had become one of the most welcoming. The store's sales had increased by 20% since she took over, and customer complaints had dropped significantly. Corporate had noticed too, sending mystery shoppers who always gave the store high marks for cleanliness and customer service. Sarah finished ringing up a young mother with twins, helping her bag the groceries while making funny faces at the babies. This was more than just a job to her. It was her community, her second home. Every day brought its own challenges and rewards, and she loved every minute of it. Little did she know that this seemingly typical Thursday morning was about to become anything but ordinary. The morning rush had settled down at Cedar Grove Market, and Sarah Chen was about to head to her office when she noticed a line forming at Jenny's register again. Without hesitation, she reopened her checkout lane, ready to help move customers through more quickly. A woman in her 50s walked up to Sarah's register, pushing a cart loaded with expensive organic products and specialty items. She wore designer clothes and perfectly styled blonde hair, with large sunglasses perched on top of her head. Her name was Karen Whitman, though Sarah didn't know that yet. What Sarah did notice was how the woman's friendly smile disappeared the moment their eyes met. Karen looked around, then pushed her cart backward slightly. "Is there another register open?" she asked loudly, ignoring the fact that Sarah's light was on and she had already started scanning items from the previous customer. "I'll be with you in just a moment," Sarah replied politely, finishing up with her current customer. She could feel Karen's eyes on her, studying her face, her name tag, her hands as she carefully bagged groceries. When it was finally Karen's turn, she didn't move forward. Instead, she raised her voice even louder. "I'd prefer to wait for someone else." The store grew quieter. A few customers in line looked up from their phones. Jenny, at the next register, paused in the middle of scanning a box of cereal. Sarah maintained her professional smile. "Ma'am, I can help you right here. I'm fully trained and can process any type of payment or coupon you might have." Karen's face turned red. "Look," she said, gripping her cart handle tightly. "I don't want to make a scene, but I'd feel more comfortable with someone else handling my groceries." She emphasized the word comfortable while looking directly at Sarah's hands. The meaning was clear to everyone within earshot. An elderly man behind Karen shifted uncomfortably. A young woman in line pulled out her phone and held it low, but the camera was definitely recording. Sarah took a deep breath. In her 3 years as manager, she had dealt with difficult customers before, but this felt different. The air in the store seemed heavier, tenser. "Ma'am," Sarah said calmly, "I understand you have a preference, but I assure you I can provide you with excellent service. If you'd like to check out, I'm happy to help you. If not, you're welcome to leave your cart here, and we'll put the items back." Karen's face grew even redder. "I want to speak to your manager," she demanded, looking around the store. "Where is your manager? Someone needs to hear about this poor service." More phones were out now. The young mother with twins from earlier had stopped pretending to shop and was watching openly. Jenny had called Mike, the security guard, who was slowly making his way toward the registers. Sarah kept her voice steady and professional, though her hands were shaking slightly under the counter. "Ma'am, I am the manager of Cedar Grove Market. My name is Sarah Chen, and I've been running this store for 3 years. Now, I'll ask you one more time, would you like me to ring up your groceries, or would you prefer to leave?" Karen's mouth opened and closed several times, but no words came out. She looked around, perhaps finally noticing the many phones recording her behavior, the security guard approaching, and the unsympathetic faces of other customers. "This is ridiculous," Karen sputtered. "I've been shopping here for years. You can't be the manager. I demand to speak to your supervisor." "That would be Mr. Thompson, our district manager," Sarah replied, her voice still professional but firmer now. "I'd be happy to give you his office number. However, he'll tell you the same thing I'm telling you now. Cedar Grove Market doesn't tolerate discrimination of any kind. You can either allow me to ring up your purchases, or you can leave the store immediately." The silence in the store was deafening. Even the usual background music seemed to have gotten quieter. Karen's face had moved past red and was approaching purple. She opened her mouth, likely to make another demand, but Mike, the security guard, chose that moment to step forward. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, standing tall in his uniform. Karen looked from Mike to Sarah, then to the phones recording her, and finally at her cart full of groceries. The fight seemed to drain out of her, replaced by the realization that she had badly miscalculated the situation. Karen Whitman stood frozen at the checkout counter, her face a mix of embarrassment and anger. The phone cameras were still recording, capturing every moment of her humiliation. But instead of leaving quietly, she made one final, desperate attempt to save face. "This is all a misunderstanding," she said, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a wheeze. "I simply prefer my usual cashier. I come here every week, you see, and I've never seen you before." She looked around the store for support, but found none. Mrs. Rodriguez, the elderly morning regular, stepped forward from the bread aisle. Her small frame carried an air of authority as she spoke. "Never seen her before? Sarah has worked here for 10 years. She helped my grandson get his first job. She carries my groceries to my car every Thursday morning." Other customers began joining in. Tom, the construction worker, still holding his turkey sandwich, spoke up. "Manager Chen helped me plan my daughter's birthday party last month, ordered all the special decorations herself." Maria, the nurse who had bought her coffee earlier, had returned to grab a forgotten item and now stood watching. "Sarah stayed late one night to help me find my lost wallet." checked all the security cameras herself. Karen's face grew paler with each testimony. The community she thought would support her was instead standing firmly behind Sarah. The phone cameras caught it all, the way Karen's shoulders slumped, how her perfectly manicured hands trembled on her shopping cart. Sarah maintained her professional composure, though inside her heart was racing. She had never expected such an outpouring of support from her customers. Each kind word helped wash away the sting of Karen's earlier behavior. Jenny, the new cashier, had tears in her eyes as she watched her manager handle the situation with grace. She would later tell her family that this was the moment she knew she wanted to become a manager herself someday. Mike, the security guard, still stood nearby, his presence a reminder that the situation could be handled differently if Karen chose to escalate things further. But Karen seemed to be deflating by the second, her expensive designer outfit suddenly looking too big for her shrinking presence. I think there's been a mistake, Karen stammered, reaching for her purse. Her sunglasses fell from her head, clattering on the floor. When she bent to pick them up, no one moved to help her. Mr. Park, the retired teacher, spoke next. The only mistake here was thinking you could disrespect our store manager and get away with it. My grandchildren love coming here because Sarah always gives them stickers. She remembers every child's name. Sarah finally spoke again, her voice clear and steady. Mrs. Whitman, I need you to make a decision now. Would you like to complete your purchase, or should we have someone return these items to the shelves? The use of her name startled Karen. She hadn't given it, but of course, the store probably had it from her loyalty card, which she'd been so proud of using to get discounts. The same card that proved she knew exactly how long Sarah had been working there. More customers had gathered now, forming a respectful but firm circle around the scene. The young mother with twins from earlier had her babies in a cart, and both were reaching toward Sarah with happy gurgles, completely unaware of the tension around them. I'll leave, Karen finally whispered, her voice barely audible. She fumbled with her purse, almost dropping it, then turned toward the exit. As she walked away, she heard the quiet murmur of conversation resume, heard Sarah's calm voice directing someone to return the items to their proper places. Just before reaching the door, Karen glanced back. She saw Sarah helping an elderly gentleman with his groceries, saw the genuine smile on both their faces, watched as other customers waited patiently in line. She saw what she had missed before, a community, a family almost, centered around this store and its manager. The automatic doors opened with a whoosh, and Karen stepped out into the late morning sun. Behind her, Cedar Grove Market continued its daily routine, but something had changed. The customers who witnessed the scene would remember this day, not for Karen's behavior, but for the way their community had come together to support one of their own. The rest of Thursday morning at Cedar Grove Market felt different. News of the incident spread quickly through the store, passing from customer to customer like a game of telephone. But unlike most rumors, this story stayed surprisingly accurate. The many phone recordings made sure of that. Sarah tried to return to her normal routine, but she noticed small changes. Customers smiled at her more warmly than usual. Some stopped to share their own stories of facing discrimination. Others simply touched her arm gently as they passed, a silent show of support that meant more than words. By lunchtime, the first local news van had appeared in the parking lot. Sarah watched from her office window as a reporter interviewed several customers who had witnessed the incident. Mrs. Rodriguez was there, gesturing passionately as she spoke. Tom, the construction worker, had returned on his lunch break to add his voice to the story. Jenny knocked softly on Sarah's office door, bringing in a cup of green tea. Sarah's favorite. The video is already on Facebook, she said quietly. It's getting shared like crazy. People are calling you a hero. Sarah took the tea with a grateful smile. I'm not a hero, Jenny. I just did my job. She paused, then added, How are you doing? I know it wasn't easy watching that happen. Jenny's eyes filled with tears again. I feel awful that I didn't speak up sooner. When she first started making those comments, I should have said something. You did exactly right, Sarah assured her. You stayed calm and called security. Sometimes the best way to handle these situations is to follow proper procedures. She took a sip of her tea. Besides, our customers said more than enough. Outside the office, the store buzzed with activity. Regular customers were bringing in flowers, cards, and even homemade cookies. The small table near customer service was starting to look like a celebration display. Mike, the security guard, had to politely turn away 3 different local activists who wanted to stage protests in the parking lot. Miss Chen doesn't want any more drama, he explained firmly. She just wants to run her store. Around 2 o'clock, Sarah's phone rang. It was Mr. Thompson, the district manager. She took a deep breath before answering. Sarah, he said, his voice serious. I've seen the videos. Corporate office is getting calls from reporters. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mr. Thompson, Sarah replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. I followed all our protocols for handling difficult customers. You did more than that, he said. You showed remarkable composure. The way you handled it. Well, let's just say people upstairs are impressed. They want to use this as a training example. Sarah felt her throat tighten. Sir, I don't want to make this bigger than it is. I just want to do my job. That's exactly why you're so good at it, Mr. Thompson said warmly. But Sarah, this is bigger than just our store now. People need to see that this kind of behavior isn't acceptable, and they need to see how to handle it professionally when it happens. After the call, Sarah walked through her store, checking on her employees and thanking customers for their support. The produce section still needed attention, the bakery needed restocking, and someone had spilled something in aisle 5. Normal, everyday problems that needed solving. But there were unusual things too. A young black girl, maybe 7 years old, ran up to Sarah and hugged her legs. My mommy says you're brave, she said before running back to her mother. An elderly Asian couple stopped her to say thank you in broken English, their eyes shining with pride. By closing time, Sarah was exhausted. The day had been emotionally draining, and tomorrow would likely bring more attention. As she did her final walkthrough of the store, she found Jenny cleaning the registers. You should go home, Sarah told her. It's been a long day. Jenny looked up, her face serious. I want you to know what you did today. It made a difference. Not just about that lady, but for all of us. You showed us how to be strong without being mean, how to stand up for ourselves while staying professional. Sarah felt tears threatening for the first time that day. She quickly checked her watch. Time to close up, she said briskly, but she squeezed Jenny's shoulder as she walked past. Outside, the evening news vans were starting to arrive, but that was tomorrow's problem. For now, she just needed to finish her closing duties, just like any other day. By Friday morning, the Cedar Grove Market incident had gone viral. The video had millions of views, and #StandWithSarah was trending on social media. News vans filled half the parking lot, and reporters tried to interview customers as they entered the store. Sarah arrived early as usual, but today she had to park in the back. She sat in her car for a few extra minutes, reading supportive text messages from her family. Her mother had called 5 times yesterday, worried but proud. Her younger sister had changed her profile picture to a Support Cedar Grove Market banner someone had made online. When Sarah walked through the back entrance, she found her staff having an emergency meeting without her. They quickly fell silent when they saw her, then burst into applause. Jenny stepped forward with a large card signed by every employee. We know you probably don't want a big fuss, Jenny said, but we needed to show you that we're all behind you. Every single one of us. Inside the card, the staff had written personal messages. Mike, the security guard, had written, You showed more courage with kindness than I ever could with strength. The night shift stockers, whom Sarah rarely saw, had all signed too. Even Mr. Jenkins, the grumpy old maintenance man, had written, You make this place worth working at. Sarah had to take several deep breaths before she could speak. Thank you, she said simply. Now let's get this store ready to open. But opening the store that morning wasn't simple. A line of customers stretched around the building, many holding flowers or handmade signs. Local news reporters interviewed people in line, asking why they had come. I drove 40 miles to shop here today, one woman told the cameras. My daughter is mixed race, and she needs to see people standing up to racism. An elderly man in line said, I've never shopped here before, but I will now. We need to support good people doing good things. Inside, Sarah tried to keep things running normally, but it wasn't easy. The flower display table had overflowed, and they had to start putting bouquets in the break room. Every register had a line stretching down the aisles. Many customers bought just one or two items, saying they simply wanted to show support. Around noon, a group of local business owners arrived. They presented Sarah with a community leadership award they had created just for her. The owner of the local bakery brought a huge cake decorated with the words, "Kindness wins." The hardware store owner offered to install security cameras for free. Sarah's phone kept buzzing with notifications. Her old college friends were sharing the video. Local community groups wanted her to speak at their events. 3 different morning talk shows had called, asking for interviews. But what touched Sarah most was the quiet support. A group of teenage girls came in, all from different backgrounds, and asked to take a selfie with her. "You're like our role model now," one said shyly. An Asian grandmother brought her young grandson to the store. She pointed at Sarah and said something in Mandarin that made the little boy's eyes go wide with admiration. Though Sarah couldn't understand the words, the meaning was clear. By afternoon, local politicians had arrived, wanting to make speeches in the parking lot. Sarah politely but firmly turned them away. "This isn't about politics," she told them. "This is about treating everyone with respect." The store's regular customers somehow managed to do their normal shopping despite the chaos. Mrs. Rodriguez insisted on helping to organize the flower displays. Tom, the construction worker, volunteered to direct traffic in the crowded parking lot during his lunch break. Late in the day, a group of young black girls came in wearing homemade t-shirts that read "Future Managers." They were from a local youth group, and their leader asked if Sarah would consider mentoring them. Sarah found herself agreeing before she even realized it. As evening approached, Sarah's employees insisted she go home early. "We got this," Jenny said firmly. "You've done enough." Walking to her car, Sarah passed a small group of people holding candles in the fading light. They weren't protesting or making speeches. They were just standing quietly, showing their support in their own peaceful way. Sarah drove home slowly, thinking about how much had changed in just 2 days. The incident had started with one person's prejudice, but it had revealed something much bigger: a community's capacity for love and support. Tomorrow would bring more cameras, more interviews, more attention. But for now, Sarah just wanted to go home, call her mom, and get some rest. By Monday morning, the Cedar Grove Market incident had reached the highest levels of corporate leadership. Sarah arrived at work to find Mr. Thompson waiting in her office with 2 executives from the company headquarters. Their expensive suits and serious faces made her small office feel even smaller. "Ms. Chen," the older executive said, standing to shake her hand. "I'm Robert Martinez, Chief Operating Officer, and this is Lisa Wong, our Head of Public Relations. We've been watching how you handled this situation, and we're very impressed." Sarah sat down at her desk, noticing how they had moved her family photos to make room for their laptops and papers. She carefully moved the photos back to their proper places as she spoke. "Thank you, but I was just doing my job." Lisa Wong smiled warmly. "That's exactly why we're here. The way you did your job has shown everyone what our company values should look like in action. We want to make some changes, and we need your help." Over the next hour, they explained their plans. The company wanted to create a new training program about handling discrimination in stores. They would use Sarah's incident as a case study, teaching other managers and employees how to respond professionally to similar situations. "We want you to help develop this program," Mr. Martinez said. "Your experience and approach would be invaluable." Sarah thought about Jenny and her other employees, about how they had watched and learned from the incident. "What exactly would this involve?" she asked carefully. The executives shared their ideas. They wanted to record training videos, create written materials, and have Sarah speak at regional management meetings. The program would be called Respect in Retail and would be used in all their stores across the country. "We'll need you to travel to other locations," Lisa explained. "Share your story, train other managers. We're prepared to offer you a significant promotion to make this happen." Mr. Thompson, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "They want to make you Regional Director of Training, Sarah. It's a big step up." Sarah looked around her small office, at the thank you cards covering her bulletin board, at the children's drawings various customers' kids had given her over the years. What would happen to Cedar Grove Market? "We bring in a new manager, of course," Mr. Martinez said. "Someone you can train before you move to the corporate office." Outside her office window, Sarah could see the store coming to life. Jenny was training a new cashier, showing the same patience Sarah had once shown her. Mrs. Rodriguez was doing her regular shopping, stopping to chat with other customers like old friends. Tom, the construction worker, was buying his usual turkey sandwich. "I have some conditions," Sarah said finally. The executives leaned forward, looking interested. "First, the training program needs to be about more than just handling discrimination. It should be about building community in our stores. That's what made the difference here, not just my response, but how our customers stood together." Lisa Wong was taking notes quickly. "Go on." "Second, I want to stay based here at Cedar Grove. I'll travel for training sessions, but this store is my home. I can do more good here, showing rather than just telling." Mr. Martinez started to object, but Sarah held up her hand. "And third, I want the program to include all employees, not just managers. Everyone needs to know how to handle these situations, from the night stalkers to the security guards." The executives exchanged looks. Mr. Thompson was trying to hide a proud smile. "Those are unusual requests," Mr. Martinez said slowly. "But given the circumstances and your proven judgment," he paused, "we'll make it work." After they left, Sarah sat quietly in her office. Through her window, she could see more flowers arriving, more customers coming to show support. A local school class was taking a field trip to the store, their teacher wanting them to learn about standing up for what's right. Sarah picked up one of the children's drawings from her desk. It showed a stick figure with black hair behind the counter, surrounded by hearts. At the bottom, in wobbly letters, it said, "My hero." She pinned it to her bulletin board with the others. Then she straightened her name badge, walked out of her office, and got back to work. She got a store to run, employees to train, and now a whole company to help change. But first, she needed to help Mrs. Rodriguez find the new organic tea she was looking for. 2 weeks after the incident, life at Cedar Grove Market was slowly returning to normal. The news vans had disappeared, and the flood of supportive visitors had become a steady trickle. Sarah was in her office, reviewing the first draft of the new training program, when Jenny knocked on her door. "Miss Chen?" Jenny's voice was tense. "She's back. Karen Whitman is here." Sarah looked up from her papers. Through her office window, she could see Karen standing nervously near the customer service desk. She looked different now, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater, her perfectly styled hair pulled back in a plain ponytail. She was holding a white envelope. "Did Mike ask her to leave?" Sarah asked, referring to their security guard. Jenny shook her head. "She asked to speak with you first. She says it's important." Sarah thought for a moment. The last 2 weeks had been full of changes. The incident had started conversations about respect and dignity that went far beyond their small store. Maybe this was another chance for change. "Tell her to wait in the break room," Sarah decided. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." When Sarah entered the break room, Karen jumped to her feet. Her face was pale, her hands shaking slightly as they held the envelope. "Please," Karen said quickly, before Sarah could speak. "I know I have no right to be here, but I need to explain something." Sarah sat down at the small break room table, gesturing for Karen to do the same. The room was quiet except for the distant sounds of the store and the soft hum of the vending machine. "The day after what happened," Karen began, her voice trembling, "my company's HR department called me in. Someone had recognized me in the video. They said my behavior violated company policy." She paused, taking a deep breath. "They gave me a choice: take unpaid leave and complete diversity training, or lose my job. I chose the training. I didn't want to go. I thought it was unfair, but I had no choice." Sarah listened silently, her face neutral but attentive. "The training wasn't what I expected," Karen continued. "It wasn't just boring videos and tests. They made us listen to real stories. People shared experiences of discrimination that made me see things differently." She opened the envelope with unsteady hands and pulled out several sheets of paper. "This is my letter of apology. I wrote it as part of the training, but every word is true. I'm so ashamed of how I acted." Sarah looked at the handwritten pages. Karen's neat handwriting filled both sides of each sheet. "The trainer asked us to think about times we might have hurt people without realizing it," Karen said softly. "I couldn't stop thinking about all the stores I've been to, all the people I might have made feel like I made you feel. Tears started rolling down Karen's cheeks. My granddaughter saw the video. She's 7. She asked me why I was being mean to the nice lady. I had no answer for her. Sarah reached for the tissue box on the break room table and offered it to Karen. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Karen said, wiping her eyes. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that what happened here, it changed me, made me face things about myself I didn't want to see. She placed the letter on the table. The training program is helping me understand and do better. But you taught me the most important lesson that day. You showed me what real dignity looks like. Sarah finally spoke, her voice gentle but firm. Thank you for coming back. It takes courage to admit when we're wrong and try to change. Karen looked up, surprised by the kindness in Sarah's voice. Change isn't easy, Sarah continued, but recognizing the need for change is the first step. What matters now is what you do with this experience. I've started volunteering at a community center, Karen said quietly, teaching computer skills to immigrants. It's not much, but it's a start. Sarah finished for her. She stood up, straightening her name badge. The store opens in 10 minutes. Would you like to stay and do your shopping? Karen's eyes filled with tears again. You let me shop here? After what I did? This store serves everyone, Sarah said simply. That hasn't changed. The only question is, have you? 6 months had passed since the incident at Cedar Grove Market. The store had changed in small but important ways. A new sign hung near the entrance. All are welcome here in multiple languages. The break room wall displayed photos from their monthly community dinners, where customers and employees shared meals and stories. Sarah Chen sat in her office, which looked different now too. Her new title on the door read Regional Director of Training and Community Relations, but she had kept her old desk and the children's drawings on her walls. She was reviewing reports from other stores that had implemented her training program. Jenny knocked on the open door. She wasn't just a cashier anymore. She had been promoted to assistant manager after Sarah's promotion. The high school students are here for their monthly mentoring session, she said. Sarah smiled and gathered her materials. The mentoring program had been her idea, born from that day when the young girls in Future Managers t-shirts had visited the store. Now, twice a month, local students came to learn about business, leadership, and community building. In the break room, 12 teenagers sat waiting. They came from different backgrounds. Some were children of immigrants, others from families who had lived in town for generations. All of them had heard about what happened 6 months ago. Today we're going to talk about turning difficult moments into opportunities for growth, Sarah began. She didn't need to mention the incident directly. Everyone knew the story. As she spoke, Sarah noticed Karen Wickman doing her weekly shopping through the break room window. Karen had become a regular customer again, but different from before. She chatted with the diverse staff, helped elderly customers reach high shelves, and even volunteered at their community events. The training program Sarah had helped develop was now being used in all the company's stores across the country, but she had made sure it wasn't just about handling discrimination. It was about building stronger communities, one store at a time. Mr. Thompson, now the regional vice president, often said that Cedar Grove Market had become a model for the whole company. Sales were up, customer satisfaction was at record levels, and employee turnover had dropped to almost zero. Other stores sent their managers to learn from Sarah's example. After the mentoring session, Sarah walked through her store, checking on things as she always did. The produce section still needed attention, there was still a spill in aisle 5 that needed cleaning, and the bakery still ran out of popular items too quickly. Some things never changed, but other things had changed dramatically. The staff now included people from many different backgrounds. They had started a program to hire refugees, teaching them English during lunch breaks. The store's bulletin board advertised community events in multiple languages. Mrs. Rodriguez was there as usual, but now she led a weekly Spanish conversation group at the store's small cafe. Tom, the construction worker, had helped build a children's reading corner near the pharmacy, where parents could leave their kids while shopping. Sarah stopped at the customer service desk, where a new employee was struggling with the register. The young woman wore a hijab and spoke with a strong accent, but her smile was bright and welcoming. Sarah remembered how nervous she had been during her own first week as a cashier all those years ago. You're doing great, Fatima, Sarah encouraged her. Remember, it's not just about the transactions, it's about making connections. At closing time, Sarah did her final walkthrough. The store was quiet now, but evidence of the day's activities was everywhere: abandoned shopping lists in different handwritings and languages, a child's drop drawing of the store's facade, a thank you note from a customer whose groceries had been carried to their car. As she reached to turn off the lights, Sarah paused. Through the window, she could see the store's reflection in the darkening sky. Cedar Grove Market wasn't just a store anymore. It had become a symbol of what a community could be when people chose understanding over ignorance, kindness over prejudice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for growth. But for now, Sarah was content knowing that from one difficult moment, so much good had grown. She locked the door, set the alarm, and walked to her car, already thinking about tomorrow's community breakfast and the new training session she would lead next week. The incident that could have divided their community had instead brought them closer together. And in the end, that was the greatest change of all.